Hello and welcome to Time of Death. I'm your host Dee.
And I'm your host Ris.
And together we are Time of Death.
If you're new here, welcome to the party. This podcast is run by two nurses who like to talk true crime, and we like to focus on cases that have a heavy medical influence to them or cases that feature a medical professional as the perpetrator or victim. So, do you have anything to add before we begin?
Just a heads up, fair warning to all. I am PMSing and a rage monster today.
I can attest.
So, buckle in. Or skip this one.
Or skip this one.
Skip it!
If you don't like it, that's fine with her.
Yeah!
All right, Dee.
Hormone monster. Truly.
Take it away, hormone monster.
Okay. So, this is a tragic medical case. Some people might be familiar with the John Jones study.
I'm not.
Okay. So, you will be after this episode.
Okay.
What did you want to say? It looked like you wanted to say something.
I wanted to say, did you want to do a trigger warning for anyone?
Trigger warning, this involves suicide and also sexual abuse involving minors. So, getting into this all started when Janet Reimer gave birth to two identical twin boys. Their names were Bruce and Brian Reimer, and they were both born in Winnipeg, Manitoba on August 22nd, 1965. Bruce was the older of the two twins, and again, these are two identical little boys, baby boys. So Janet was their mom, along with Ron, their dad, and they were Mennonite. So it's I looked this up because I didn't know. I guess it's similar to Amish, but a little less stringent.
Okay. Wait, can I add something? So I did a neonatal resuscitation certification today. Mm-hmm. And tell me, like, if you knew this, but because I didn't, but only 1% of babies that come out and they're not breathing, you just kind of work them out, get them to breathe, and only 1% require compressions.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
They come out and they're not breathing. When they're in the freaking womb, their O2 sat is only like 40%.
Get the hell out of here.
I know. I was like, all the ED nurses there were like, 40%. Oh my God. But that was just interesting to me. I had no idea.
That is so interesting. Thanks for sharing, Ris, because I had no idea. And the baby stuff has just never, I mean, it's beautiful and it's wonderful and magical, but I'd be too nervous to deal with the neonates.
I know, I could
Let alone
never.
Kids, like I am like,
I know. Just give me an adult, please.
Give me
at least like a 17-year-old.
Give me a Jerry Psych.
Oh, no, you can keep the Jerry's. They are hardy.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they are probably the most resilient, treatment resilient, everything, resistant, resilient, whatever it is. But anyways, thank you for that tidbit. That is really cool that you're certified now.
Also, it's National Bat Day.
You're a baddie.
You're bat shitty.
You're bat shit.
Here, you can just continue now.
I was just trying to, when you said that, I was like, I felt like my mind was going like really, really slowly because I was trying to think of a clever pun, and I was just staring at you, and I'm like, bat, 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 bat. Okay, anyways, back to our story. So at 6 months old, these boys were kind of peeing weird. And they were diagnosed with phimosis. So
with what?
Phimosis.
What's phimosis?
So I had Googled this previously, so it's in my notes, thankfully. But an uncircumcised male, basically you can't retract the foreskin. So it's like stuck. So phimosis. So the only way to really resolve this is circumcision.
Okay.
So
How old are they again at this point?
6 months.
Okay. So they're little.
They're babies. They're babies.
So they weren't circumcised at birth.
Right.
Okay.
So at 7 months, and also I had Googled circumcision and Mennonites. So I thought maybe there was like some, I don't know. I'm not very familiar with with that community.
Was there a link?
No.
Oh.
So it was totally okay for their beliefs to be circumcised.
Let us know if you have any input.
What? Mennonites? What? Oh, me? I'm giving you my input.
No, I'm talking to the audience.
Oh.
I don't think it was appropriate to say, though. I told the listeners to give us input on whether or not Mennonites.
This is cute.
I believe it's...
Keep it. It threw me off, but it's cute. So, basically...
Just disregard me, too. Dee is PMSing, and I'm just...
batty.
Nuts.
All right. So, general practitioner, Dr. Jean-Marie Huot, performed the operation. However, they utilized a really unconventional way at that time, which would be electrocauterization. So, using electricity to get these little foreskins off.
Oh, Lord.
But, unfortunately, on poor little Bruce, his penis was burned beyond surgical repair. He was deformed.
Yeah. Which one, Bruce?
Yeah, the firstborn,
okay.
Bruce. So because of this, they chose not to operate on Brian, and his phimosis cleared up without any type of surgery.
Okay.
So...
That's so weird that they have the option to wait, and they don't just wait instead of having them undergo a circumcision that the parents didn't initially want.
Well, it is medically concerning, because then you don't want to worry about, these are babies, they're very delicate. So I do agree with watchful waiting, but anyways, what happens is the parents are like very concerned about poor little Bruce and the psychological effect that having this damaged penis is going to have on him as he gets older. So they take him to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore around 1967. So he's about 2 years old at the time. And they see Dr. John Money, who is at the time considered a pioneer in the field of sexual development and gender identity. He's a psychologist, been on TV, interviewed, and he was world renowned because of his work with intersex patients.
Okay.
So, intersex patients, so basically, gender is a spectrum, and intersex, if people don't know, is kind of instead of being either more masculine or feminine presenting, intersex is kind of somewhere in the middle.
So basically, parents were like, okay, his penis is terribly deformed. It's basically going to be non-functional.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, okay, let's spare him.
Well, I don't know if they knew it was going to be non-functional because he was only 2 years old at the time.
Okay.
But his penis being damaged beyond being able to repair it was its own kind of trauma. Even if it ended up working down the line as an adult, at that age, they were very concerned with what his life would be like.
Yeah. And like you said, the psychological aspect and that's traumatic. It's a traumatic event that physically he's gone through and also psychologically.
Well, just wait. It gets much worse. So at the time, Dr. Money was a firm believer in the theory of gender neutrality, which is essentially that gender identity is developed because of social learning from early childhood, and that the gender identity could be changed with behavioral interventions put into place. So he's a huge proponent of this at the time. So the Reimers were actually familiar with Dr. Money because they saw him on TV, an interview in February 1967, the news, where he discussed his theories about gender and gender identity. Under Dr. Money's care, I'm going to call him Bruce for right now, but we'll get more into that. Bruce would essentially be raised under the optimum gender rearing model that a lot of Dr. Money's work with intersex kids was based off of. So what that means is that essentially sex and gender socialization / medicalization, so having these gender affirming surgeries and basically assigning intersex kids either masculine or feminine traits, and then obviously the behaviors, the appropriate behavioral, I say appropriate, but it was not appropriate, but clinical interventions in place. Essentially what it tries to do is make each child's body and upbringing as consistent as possible, aka assigning them a singular gender identity via surgery and how they're raised. I don't know if that makes sense. So if someone presented and, they are born with masculine and feminine sex organs, Dr. Money would say, well, we're going to raise this individual as a boy. And he would have at the very young age, before they can really, explore their own gender identity, they would have I'm going to say corrective surgery in this term because it was not affirming at that time. They would have surgery and then they would undergo behavioral interventions and essentially raise this child as a boy.
Okay.
So
it's like shaping them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's been criticized as something that is very sexist. It is very sexist because it's essentially deciding for the child what they're going to be and what they're going to become.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is Dr. Money's stance. This is his belief. This is what he's a big proponent of as a psychologist.
Okay.
So at this time, there was more advancement made in vaginal reconstructive surgery than surgery that would be constructing a penis.
Okay.
So it was easier to make Bruce a female rather than preserve the penis.
Yeah. Okay.
So the suggestion was made that Bruce would be most happiest living as a woman with a functioning vagina rather than a man with a deformed penis.
Okay, so instead of letting Bruce grow up and choose for himself, they're like, okay, it's easier for us to construct a vagina, so we're going to go that route, and we'll shape him into being a female.
Yep, that was the basis. And also there was a conflict of interest in that this was the perfect case for Dr. Money because these two boys are identical. They have been raised up till this point, they're 2 years old, as males, but Bruce could easily become a girl so that he can better test all these theories that he had.
Dr. Money sounds like a skeevy dude.
Yeah, Brian, Bruce's twin, would be the ideal control group because they not only shared the same genetic information, the same family dynamics, the same womb.
Yeah.
And if he was able to make this happen, Bruce would be the first reassignment and reconstruction surgery ever performed on a male infant who was not born intersex. So with both male and female parts.
So Money was definitely writing on his success story here.
Absolutely.
He's like, okay, this is going to work to my advantage.
And he let this conflict of interest dictate Bruce's care, which is a totally evil and wrong.
And unethical.
Absolutely. Essentially, Dr. Money and John Hopkins go to the parents and are like, hey, Janet, Ron, we're going to do this. This is the best thing to do for Bruce. And at only 22 months old, Bruce underwent a bilateral orchidectomy. So his testes were removed. And a rudimentary vulva was constructed by a genital plastic surgeon.
Wait, can I say something? You know, every time I hear orchidectomy, is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so. That's not why I said it.
I think of orchids. And then I wonder, is there like a visual similarity?
To scrotum?
Maybe like the closed orchid, like before it fully blooms.
It sounds really beautiful, but then I realize we're talking about the scrotum. I do not think of orchids or flowers.
Well, orchidectomy? Why? I gotta look that up. Give me a second, guys.
That's a beautiful idea. It sounds so poetic, and I'm over here, like, probably being a little too realistic.
Oh. The genus of the orchid comes from the ancient Greek orchis, literally meaning testicle because of the shape of the twin tubers in some species of orchis.
So, you know, like the internal anatomy, maybe that's like the stem. The stem.
Possible.
That's such a good connection, Riz. You're such an artiste.
I'm just a genius. You can carry on.
Thank you. I shall. So, Bruce was reassigned. His whole gender was reassigned at the mere 22 months old, and he was going to be raised as a female. So he was given the name Brenda.
Okay. Brenda and Brian.
And the team, as well as Dr. Money, continued to see the child annually for consultations, and Dr. Money's following him for psychological support, which turns out to be very ironic. So, I write here in my notes, I say, Money was a sick, and I think a pedophile, ? So, I think that summarizes Dr. Money pretty well, but I'll elaborate a little bit.
Okay.
In the sessions with Dr. Money and Brenda and Brian, there was an exercise that they would do called childhood sexual rehearsal play. And part of Money's theory was that reproductive behavior formed at the foundation of gender, in that, like, by playing, these kids would lay the groundwork for their sexual development as adults.
I don't like where this is going.
I know. So I'm not even gonna, intentionally condensed it and took things out because it's very triggering for a lot of people. But basically, playing with thrusting motions and copulation was a key aspect of gender development in primates. So it must be in humans too, right? You know what? We are far removed from freaking monkeys.
Yeah, exactly.
And other monkeys are not coercing children to do that. That's the key.
No, this is wrong.
It's very wrong. So,
but facilitating this as an adult,
it's sick.
As a professional, in air quotes.
So, Money is like making them do these inappropriate sexual behaviors, and the kids are like, even at a young age, they're super uncomfortable. And this behavior started when they were about 6 years old. And I think that it's so clear that this, like, Dr. Money had no morals. And you know what? This happened, 1970s, so I'm sure he's long freaking dead. Good riddance.
Hopefully.
Because even just reading this made my, skin crawl, and I had to, heavily edit some of the stuff out because what the freaking... But I think there was some ulterior motive to all of this. Not only was it part of his research and his theory, but I think that he got some kind of sick pleasure as well. So part of this was that the twins were forced to act out these roles with Brian as the masculine element and then Bruce or Brenda as the female. So it was very, very disturbing. On at least one occasion, Money actually took photos of the kids doing these things.
Did he do this with other patients?
So that was unclear because these two were very vocal later on what happened. Mm-hmm. A lot came out, but it's very possible that he had other victims, especially, young kids. They may not even remember as adults. Mm-hmm. So that was not very clear, unfortunately. So when either Brenda or Brian, did not feel comfortable, they didn't want to do it, Money would get angry. And this was also a red flag to me. Because he's emotionally vested in this for him to get angry like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If it was clinical, we're gonna, you know what I mean? And by no means am I trying to rationalize this behavior and by saying, if it was clinical, but there was an emotional element on his part, whether it was arousal or what, but that just gave me the photographs, and this gave me a huge ick as well.
I agree. And you know what? This is, obviously this is not an actual clinical practice.
Absolutely not.
But even if you were doing something that's completely
by the book,
by the book and not horrific and predatory and mm-hmm. disgusting like this, if you were doing something like a therapeutic treatment for mm-hmm. someone and they're showing signs of distress,
especially children,
you stop. You give them a minute, you dial it back. You don't scream at them because they're not doing what you want.
Absolutely.
But this just shows how nasty this man is.
He is a sicko. I can't I can't express myself to the fullest because I'll get edited out. But it's truly a sick.
Yeah, he's a disgusting human.
Mm-hmm. So both twins recall that Money was normally sweet as pie around their parents. So sweet, polite, professional, but very mean and nasty when he was alone with them. Mm-hmm. When they resisted looking at each other's genitals, Money got very aggressive and screamed at them and essentially forced them to comply. So for several years, these behaviors continued. So they were 6 years old when that started, and it went on for some time. So Money would go on to publish case reports and blah, 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 blah about the John Joan case. And he would write, and this is a quote, "The child's behavior, Bruce, Brenda, is so clearly that of an active little girl and so different from the boyish ways of her twin brother. Remember that." And during this time, Brenda is receiving estrogen therapy. Mm-hmm. She had developed breasts at this point. So more female characteristics.
Okay.
The twins both attended school in Winnipeg and went on to high school. However, Bruce stopped going to school at a point and ended up being just tutored at home privately.
Okay. Why was that? Was that because of bullying? Was that because she was struggling a lot?
Yeah, they were struggling very much.
Okay.
By 13, just to be respectful of this individual, they wanted to be called David. So that's the name that I will use moving forward when I refer to him for the rest of the podcast. So David ended up feeling suicidal, depressed, and told his parents that he's going to kill himself if they make him see Dr. Money again. Mm. So that was his hard line in the sand.
As a parent, though, for my child to have said that, that would set off warning bells. You will kill yourself if you have to go back to this person. That would trigger me to start investigating.
Yes, and his parents conferred with his endocrinologist and his psychiatrist. So the decision was made to tell David the truth about his sex reassignment surgeries and other upbringing, the whole shebang, share everything that had been going on. And at that time, he was 14.
Okay.
Once he learned the truth, he decided to assume a male gender identity and renamed himself David, which, again, is why I'm calling him David. He underwent treatment. He had several operations to reverse the reassignment, including testosterone injections. He had a double mastectomy and a phalloplasty. So they created a penis.
Okay.
So he went on to grow up. He worked at a slaughterhouse. He did a bunch of odd jobs just around. And he ended up getting married to Jane Fontaine and adopted her 3 kids as his own.
Oh.
He liked to camp. He liked to go fishing, collecting antiques, and he collected old coins. So this really came on the radar. This whole situation was picked up by the press. And David went on to tell his story to Milton Diamond, who was an academic sexologist, who the whole purpose of this was to discourage physicians from doing this to other infants.
Good. But I'm glad David finally was able to get what he needed out of this, whereas everything else has been taken and decided for him.
Yeah, that's exactly. He was able to reclaim his identity and, decide for himself what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And then also let people know and try to protect other people from the same fate. Mm-hmm. So the story ended up being published in the Rolling Stone, the New York Times, and everything that David said contradicted what Dr. Money had published. While David was raised as a girl, he never identified as a girl, interestingly enough. He was ostracized, bullied. His peers would call him like cave woman because of his female traits. And nothing, no matter the injections, the estrogen, the dresses, the ballet lessons, nothing made David feel female. And the story shed light on the unethical and traumatic therapy that Dr. Money was doing.
So after when he was 14 and he said, "Mom and Dad, I'm not going back or I will kill myself," then they let him stay home, and then he was able to, they told him everything that went on. So he did not see, him and his brother didn't see Dr. Money at all after that.
Nope. Yeah, they decided to, because of his distress, they decided to disclose to him what had happened. And he later, and this is as an adult, in the New York Times and the Rolling Stone, there was a lot of publicity about what had happened. And also during these sessions, Dr. Money actively concealed the fact that David's reassignment to female was not going well at all, and that he was really struggling.
Yeah. Which is such a huge component, like whether or not the patient is, doing well in the therapy, air quotes. That's such a huge component of our care for people.
Absolutely. And to ignore that, again, for your own benefit and your own ulterior motives. So both Brian and David both had a really strained relationship with their parents. And Brian went on to commit suicide after overdosing on antidepressants in 2002. May 2004, David's wife, Jane, told him that she wanted a divorce. And just 2 days afterwards, David drove to a grocery store parking lot and shot himself in the head.
Wow.
He was only 38 years old at that time. And him and his twin brother are buried in St. Vital Cemetery in Winnipeg. So this is a really sad case, and I just want to take this as an opportunity. Like, if you're struggling, please don't hesitate to contact either, emergency medical services. The suicide hotline is 988. You can always call 211. Look up mobile crisis hotline in your area. Huh?
These are resources in the U.S.
Yes.
If you're from another country, which, oh my God, we have international listeners. I don't know what they are, but you should talk to someone.
And, especially if you're under 18 or, even over 18, but if you're a younger person, reaching out to a trusted adult is never the wrong decision. And if you're struggling like David was with suicidal ideation, getting help, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And it's so, so important. And it can really make the difference between life and death. These two people went through unimaginable trauma. Mm-hmm. Basically, like, I can't even imagine. And this adds a whole other dynamic by making the person that you're doing these acts with your sibling, your twin sibling. I
can't imagine obviously they weren't at fault for any of this, but I imagine that they probably had some level of, probably
awareness,
self-repulsion, mm-hmm. and guilt and shame that they did this with, especially with a sibling. But again, it's obviously not any of the kid's fault.
No.
It's this twisted man.
He is twisted. And, I think about these poor babies because they were really babies.
Yeah.
And, their parents trusted this individual.
Mm-hmm.
If something makes you feel ick, that's your gut, and listen to it. And, if you ruffle some feathers, so be it. Don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. I think that's an important lesson to share as well. And, if you've gone through something that is traumatic, a lot of times that can manifest physically, and, there's ways to help heal that as well. Those are my big takeaways for the case. And I just want to say rest in peace to David and Brian. We hope that you found some peace and some, I hope that your afterlife is better than.
And, the parents as well, I hope they found peace too, because, probably maybe at the time they thought that they were doing what's best, and they were trusting a medical professional to have their best interests mm-hmm. in mind and their child's best interests in mind. And this person just manipulated them and abused his power. Mm-hmm. So I hope the parents also found peace in this.
Yeah, I agree. I hope so too. But no peace for Dr. Money. So Dr. Money outlived both of them.
Dang.
He died in 2006. Yeah, not a good dude. Detrimental to the psych community. Absolutely. Yeah. And, to do this, especially to children.
Yeah.
I hope that he is punished.
Yeah.
In the afterlife.
Hopefully.
But that's all I got.
Very nice, Dee. Much impressed.
Thank you. You
want to call it?
I want to call it.
All right, we're going to call it now.
The time is 18:54. For all you non-military, non-medical people, that is 6:54 p.m.
Get in shape here. Shape it up.
What are you what are you talking about? Shape it up. I think that you're overtired.
I mean, get with the program. Learn military time.
Where the hell did that come with? Shape it up. Shape it up. I'm like,
I was trying to think of a specific phrase. Snap out of it. Snap to it. Thanks, Mom.
Good God. All right. Call it.
I'm calling it.
Good night.
Good night. Keep killing it.
You're killing it. Bye.
Bye.